Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the vice commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
A beautiful day, potentially one of the great days ever in civilization. Things that have been going on for hundreds of years and thousands of years. We're at a minimum very, very close, and I think we're beyond very close. And I want to thank Bibi for really getting in there and doing a job. We've worked well together, as we have with many other countries, both of us, with many other countries, which is the only way this whole situation gets solved. And I'm not just talking about Gaza. Gaza is one thing, but we're talking about much beyond Gaza. The whole deal, everything getting solved. It's called peace in the Middle East. So today is a historic day for peace, and Prime Minister Netanyahu and I have just concluded an important meeting on many vital issues, including Iran, trade, the expansion of the Abraham Accords, and most importantly, we discussed how to end the war in Gaza, but it's just a part of the bigger picture, which is peace in the Middle East, and let's call it eternal peace in the Middle East. So this is far more than anybody expected, but the level of support that I've had from the nations in the Middle East and surrounding Israel and neighbors of Israel has been incredible. Incredible. Every single one of them.
Welcome back to Training Tuesday, folks. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, Peace and the Dragon Prophecy, folks. October 7th, 2023 unleashed a new war in the Middle East, a place where nothing ever seems to be solved or resolved, for that matter. President Trump's peace proposal is more than just Gaza, as you just heard, but it's designed to achieve peace with Israel amongst all of its neighbors in the Middle East. But can it work? I think it can. But hard questions have to be answered in order to achieve that success. Questions like the new movie from Dinesh D'Souza, The Dragon Prophecy, asks, like this: whose land is it really? Who is good and who is evil? How can good prevail over evil without becoming evil itself? Could the fate of the world, of humanity itself, be tied to this conflict? How does America fit into this picture? Well, the movie is based on Jonathan Cahn's #1 international bestseller, The Dragon's Prophecy. And this film provides a secret key to unlock the problem and the solution. Kahn reveals that October 7th and today's conflicts in the Middle East are an eerie revival of ancient battles described in the early books of the Bible, suggesting that we may be living in the end times of humanity itself. Well, Dinesh D'Souza, the maker of the documentary, will be with us to discuss the film in the next segment. He has had a prominent career as a writer, scholar, public intellectual, and filmmaker. He was born in India. Dinesh came to the U.S. as an exchange student at the age of 17 and graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Dartmouth College. He's the author of many, many best-selling books, including America, The Big Lie, Death of a Nation, and United States of Socialism. He's also the creator of 3 of the top 10 highest-grossing political documentaries ever made, and we'll be welcoming him in the next segment. Well, folks, the long-awaited Secretary of Defense meeting with the generals was this morning. I just want to make a comment about that and this president. What you are seeing the President of the United States do and the Secretary of War do is pierce the veil of the 5th generation warfare, psychological influence operations, propaganda operations, narrative operations, and indoctrination that's trying to make your mind set on a reality that's just not true. Every time President Trump does something like the announcement yesterday that we saw, that we played that clip of the peace proposal between the Arab nations and the Palestinians and Israel, he's piercing that veil of 5G warfare that even the American media is practicing. That's why I showed it, because we're not American media. We're Americans exercising our free speech rights. We should be the American media, but they don't, those elite ones, they don't want us to be able to call ourselves that. But that's what we are. We're the independent American media, and we're going to do everything we can to defeat the fifth generation warfare that General Mike Flynn and Boone Cutler, who we lost a few weeks ago, unfortunately, wrote about in their book, The Handbook, The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. And if you haven't gotten it, you should get it. As I said on the day we did the tribute show to Boone, I'm going to cover fifth generation warfare in every single show at some point, in some way, because it's that important. For if one person sees these videos and these shows and is able to get their eyes opened and their mind open and protect themselves from this stuff, that's what I'm going to do. That's what the President of the United States is doing. And that's what the Secretary of War did this morning when he called the generals. Now, the media's been reporting it was all the generals in one spot, right? Oh, my gosh. The hand-wringing, it wasn't. It was all the generals and admirals that are occupying command positions. So if you're a commander of a fleet or a commander of a numbered air force or a major command, if you're a commander of a unit in the field, some field units have brigadier generals as commander, then you were ordered to come to this meeting. And contrary to popular belief and the fifth generation warfare is being practiced against you, martial law was not declared. They did not talk about starting World War III. As a matter of fact, they didn't even publicly fire any generals, which I didn't think they would anyway, or admirals. But they did say a few very important things. One is that if you're uncomfortable and sinking low in your chair with what Secretary Hegseth had just talked about, then you should do the honorable thing and resign. Because you see, folks, we have these generals and admirals that the folks on X that have been tracking on them, many of whom were harmed by their unlawful implementation of the COVID-19 shot mandate. We have them on video showing them doing the wrong thing and not taking care of their troops. And they probably were sinking low in those chairs, and they should do the honorable thing and resign. If you can't support the 10 directives that Secretary Hegseth said were in your inboxes this morning, then you should take your low-life butt, submit your resignation, and get the hell out, because that's what needs to happen. You did the wrong thing if you don't think that all 10 of those things are standard. When I heard him talk about his 10 directives, I said to myself, well, these are just standard items, the way we used to lead when I was a commander and when I was an NCO and when I was an airman in EOD. This is what we expected of each other and our leaders, and what our leaders expected of us. Go do PT every day. Be hard on yourselves physically and mentally, so that when things are hard, when bullets are flying and bombs are blowing up and people are trying to kill you every minute of every day, you'll be ready. That's what being the Department of War is all about. Now, the interesting thing is that the Secretary of War has issued most of those orders, if not all of them, already, and they were supposed to be being executed properly. Why do you think he wanted to go face-to-face with the generals and admirals all occupying command positions? Because they're not aggressively implementing and executing and following their lawful orders from this commander-in-chief. One of the other things that Secretary Hegseth said today was, look, we're going to review every case from the last administration for generals and admirals. And if appears that you're following what your politically elected leadership was telling you to do, even though you disagreed with it, but you were following it and it was lawful, we're going to take that into consideration, because he mentioned and pointed out he's already fired a number of senior leaders, starting with the last chairman of the Joint Chiefs and all of the JAG admirals in general. So that's very interesting that he said that. And here's why he said that. I'll remind everybody. He said that because what we're expecting these generals to do, if they're going to stay, is follow the orders of the elected president by the American people that they just elected, the lawful orders. And if they can't do that, but they were following the orders of the Biden administration and the Obama administration with zeal, but they can't follow these lawful orders, they need to go. But if they can follow them, apparently they're going to give them an opportunity to do just that. Why? Well, because we live in a constitutional republic. We, the people, put Donald Trump in office, and theoretically, we, the people, put Joe Biden in office. Now, I think the election was stolen too, but we still have to live with that. He was sworn in as president of the United States. So there's that we have to live with, and we have to honor that. And that's what Secretary Hegseth do. So nobody should be surprised when I tweeted out that not one general or admiral should not be able to sign up 100% to every one of those 10 directives that Pete Hegseth said was in their inboxes. He went through them. And they're all honorable, and they're just good combat standards. That's what I heard as I listened to him explain each one of those. They were all focused on combat standards, with one exception. I had heard about them all before, and that is he's going to reform the Inspector General's process in office because it was weaponized against American citizens, especially those that opposed the unlawful COVID vaccine mandate. So I look forward to seeing what that policy looks like and how it's implemented, because there are some sharp officers and enlisted personnel that have been working on reforms for the Inspector General's office for a long, long time. And I know what it's supposed to look like. I've interviewed them right here on this show. We're going to get back to the main topic of this show right now, and that is the Dragon Prophecy. Here is Jonathan Cahn, the man that wrote the book that the documentary is about that, and then we'll take a break and come back to Dinesh. Go ahead, Mr. Producer, run clip 1A.
This is Jonathan Cahn, and I have some exciting news. The Dragon's Prophecy is now going to be a full-length motion picture, a movie that's going to be coming to the screen, coming to theaters across America, hopefully to a theater near you. And it's coming out this October. The Dragon's Prophecy, Israel, the Dark Resurrection, and the End of Days. This is the last book I wrote before I wrote The Harbinger, which just came out. The Dragon's Prophecy debuted as the #1 book in America. It opens up the mystery of end-time prophecy that's happening right now. What we're witnessing on the world stage that actually lines up with the end-time prophecy of the prophets of the Bible, actually lines up with the book of Revelation, even the colors of the apocalypse that are appearing now in the world. It's going to open up the mystery of the dark resurrection, the sea peoples, the mystery of Hamas that actually appears in the Bible, that behind October 7th was actually Adolf Hitler, the resurrection of the ancient Philistines, the dragon, and the woman of Revelation 12, that vision, the enemy, and what does it have to do with what's happening right now before our eyes? What does end-time prophecy really say? What does the future really hold? What do we need to know? And how to make sure you're prepared? Now, the director of The Dragon's Prophecy is the powerful documentary director, Dinesh D'Souza. Many of you know him from his other films. Now, I'm going to be in it. It'll have other things as well as what's in The Dragon's Prophecy, but he'll have other people as well. Eric Metaxas is going to be appearing in it. U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, is going to be appearing in The Dragon's Prophecy. Eric Stakelbeck is going to be appearing in The Dragon's Prophecy, and the Prime Minister of Israel, even Benjamin Netanyahu, is going to be appearing in The Dragon's Prophecy.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon. Revelation 12:3.
Once again, an armed attack in the Middle East, but this time it's different.
October 7th was the Devil's Holiday.
It's very hard to believe what happened, even though I was there and seeing with my own eyes and seeing them laughing and killing and having fun with it.
Because if you don't open the door, they are going to kill you and they are going to kill me, so please open the door.
So who are the Jews? Who are the Palestinians? And whose land is it really?
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show and the Dragon's Prophecy. That's what we're talking about today. You heard from Jonathan Cahn in the first segment about the book and that he's making a movie about this. And the director's Dinesh D'Souza, and Dinesh is with me today. Thank you, sir, for giving us the honor to come on the show and be able to talk about this new movie. This is a little bit different. I think I've interviewed for you for like 3 or 4 of your documentary movies before they came out, but this one's a little bit different. What's the meaning of the title of this documentary?
So, the Dragon's Prophecy is a reference to a description in the book of Revelation in which the dragon, representing the devil, goes to war with a woman representing Israel, and the woman is pregnant, representing, well, the Messiah. So the purpose of picking a title like this, both for Jonathan Cahn, the book, but also for me, is that we are trying to suggest that underneath our political battles is not only a moral battle, but a spiritual battle. And it's nothing less than a battle between God and the devil. It's a battle that like goes back to the rebel angels in heaven, to the very beginning of time. And in some ways, we can look at some of the important things happening around us, both in America and in the Middle East. And we can see the signposts of biblical prophecy. We can see the way in which good and evil are playing out on this human landscape in front of us. So you're right, this is a different film for me. My earlier films have been, one way or another, involved the meaning of America. But this one involves October 7th. It involves the biblical significance of the war in the Middle East. It involves biblical archaeology, a hint of biblical prophecy. So it is a much wider canvas with implications, I think, for each of our human souls.
All right, absolutely right. The President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu introduced this peace proposal yesterday. How does that fit into the landscape of the prophecy? Having done this and done all this research on this documentary, what do you see as how that fits in?
So, if you believe the Bible, this issue is not going to be permanently solved. And I think we can see this not just from a kind of spiritual point of view, but just from a very secular point of view. You get rid of Hamas, but where is Hamas going to go? What about all the people, the civilians who have sheltered Hamas, who have guns in their basement, who have the mindset of Hamas, who have been indoctrinated by Hamas? What about global jihad, which is cooked up in Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Pakistan and Qatar and Iran? It's much bigger than not only Hamas, it's bigger than Gaza, it's bigger than the West Bank. It has aspirations to penetrate Europe and America. They want to take over our cities. They want to get on our school boards. They want 1,000 Ilhan Omars. So I think it's fair to say that while Trump is trying to achieve some meaningful progress, and I hope he succeeds, in some ways, the big picture we're still going to be dealing with.
Yeah. Do you find it interesting that that centers around this Gaza Strip where the Philistines, I believe, are from, and it literally, to me, paints the picture between good and evil, as you point out in the documentary. Where do you see that piece of it coming into play with the film that you?
So Jonathan Kahn has this, very remarkable analogy between Israel versus Hamas today and the battles of the ancient Israelites against the Philistines. It should be said that the name Philistine, the name Palestine, that's the same name. That's the same word. But it should also be said that we're not actually claiming, and Kahn does not claim, that these are genetically the exact same people. In fact, the Philistines came to that region from the Aegean, from the Mediterranean. They were really from Europe, from places like Cyprus. They were not Arabs. They were not Semites. Now, that being said, the tactics of October 7th and the tactics of the Philistines, one and the same. I'll give the example of the biblical hero called Samson. He represents the strength of Israel. He's captured by the Philistines. They take him, the Bible says, where? To Gaza. So the Philistines occupied what is today the Gaza Strip. Gaza is named in the Bible. It says that they blinded him. They blinded Samson kind of the way Israel was blinded on October 7th. It says that the people of Gaza said, bring Samson out so we might be entertained by him. Right after October 7th, they stripped the hostages. They paraded them out there. People were dancing and Allahu Akbar. So there is a close parallel between what's happening now, in fact, what happened 2 years ago on October 7th, and some of these ancient descriptions that you find right there in the Old Testament. One of the things Kahn says, which I find very provocative, very arresting, he goes, Samson was the first hostage of Gaza.
That's very interesting. That is that's very poignant too, Dinesh. When he says that, and when you ask the question, who were the Jewish people? Who really owns this land? How does the book and the movie attempt to answer this?
So in the film, I go down roads that go beyond the book. The book gives a biblical answer to that question. And the biblical answer itself can be supported, and I do support it, with biblical archaeology. You'll see me in these archaeological pits. I'm pulling like stones and seals out of the ground. And you can see that these biblical characters like King David and Isaiah, the prophet Jeremiah, even Pontius Pilate from the New Testament, for many, many centuries, these figures were in the Bible, but only in the Bible. They could not be independently corroborated, but now they can be due to the stunning findings of biblical archaeology. So it's almost like God is speaking back through the stones in the language of science itself, in the language of archaeology. So all of this is in the film. But I would say this, how does anybody in any country get the title deeds to a piece of land? There are really only three ways. One, you were there first, right? You're the original inhabitants. Number two, you get it through some sort of negotiation or treaty. Number three, you take it by conquest. All the borders of the world everywhere are decided by one of these three ways. And my point is, when you apply this three-part test to Israel, to the Jews, you notice that they check all three boxes. The Jews were there first, check. The Jews got the land by treaty. The UN gave it to them after World War II, check. And Israel has fought three wars, 1948, 1967, 1973. They've held the land by conquest, check. So even America can't meet this three-part test, right? Because the Native Americans were here first. But in the case of Israel, they check all the boxes. And that's why it is, I think, so strange that you've got people, not just on the left, but even on the right, somehow claiming that Israel are occupiers, they don't have rights to the land. The Jews today are not real descendants of the ancient Israelites. There's a lot of hocus pocusery going on here, and a lot of young people who don't know anything are being suckered by it.
Yeah, they are being suckered by it. Why do you think that is? How, I talk a lot about fifth generation warfare, General Flynn and Boone Cutler's book, The Citizen's Handbook to that, which is narrative based, psychologically based. From your perspective, have you learned anything in doing the research and doing this documentary about how, especially the younger generation's minds have been affected to convince them that they think the Jewish people and Israel are on the wrong side of this?
This is a very awkward issue for me. I try to deal with it in the movie. I have Tucker asking a question to Ted Cruz, then I take that exact same question to Netanyahu. I pose it to him. So it's all dealt with in the film. But for me personally, it's been awkward because, of course, I've known Tucker for 30 years. I did a speaking tour with him last year in Australia. I've spoken at Candace Owens's Blexit rallies. Now, I've met these people in other contexts. When at Blexit, we were talking about, affirmative action and DEI. And with Tucker, we were talking about COVID and the police state. And none of this came up. So now that these guys have become kind of these Pied Pipers of anti-Israel sentiment, I can kind of see why the young people go for it. A lot of these young people have developed an earned distrust of institutions, right? I mean, we know that the CDC lied to them and the FBI lied to them. Institutions have let them down. So they have become, as a result, very ripe to believe that there's always a conspiracy theory, that whenever they're told something, it is the opposite of the truth. And so as a result, when you have Candace and Tucker posing as sort of citizen investigators, Charlie Kirk was not shot by this trans allied guy. Some Mossad guy climbed out of a pipe and shot him when nobody noticed, and it was somehow was not on the video. People are like, oh, wow, well, we better look into that one. So you have these endless investigations. They never go anywhere. They never produce any reliable facts. They never come to any conclusions, but they do poison the minds of young people. And to me, what's even more concerning, they divide MAGA.
Yeah, they do. It's like Tucker. He and I agree. Tucker and I agree on Ukraine and what our policy ought to be more focused on Ukraine, but we disagree on his position on Israel. And I think for me, Dinesh, and I'm wondering what you saw, how you see it, is you mentioned the October 7th attacks. I see that as an attack filled with atrocities that we haven't seen since the Nazi Germans days, at least in the Middle East and Europe and the Western world, for that matter, and that Israel as a nation has not only a right but a responsibility to respond to completely eliminate that threat, because we saw things on October 7th and afterwards that are just abominable. They're international war crimes, and nobody on the side of the pro-Hamas folks seems to want to hold those people accountable.
Well, I show some of that in the movie with the graphic warning. I don't show the worst of it, but I show enough because I think it's important for people to see it. So that's the first point. But look, I think even in a very kind of Machiavellian analysis or realpolitik analysis, I would say, look, all right, we give Israel $3.8 billion. And if you think that's too much, we can have a discussion about it.
Yeah.
But I think we get a pretty good ROI, like return on investment. Why? Because Israel is on the front lines of fighting radical Islam. And not only that, they do it with a kind of strategic brilliance that we don't seem, at least right now, to be capable of. Could we have pulled off that pager deal with these guys? Abdul, you ready for jihad? Bam! I mean, this was just genius. And I'm thinking, I wish our CIA was that good. Now, we've had dealings with radical Islam now for 50 years. Jimmy Carter, pulled out the rug from the Shah. We got Khomeini. We, of course, went into Afghanistan after 9/11, but the Taliban eventually came back. We didn't do so well in Iraq. So I say to myself, if we can sort of offload the fight here to some people who are close to the scene, on the ground, understand these terrorist networks, not just in Gaza, but in Sudan and Yemen and the double game of the Qataris and Turkey. I'm really happy we've got Israel there doing this work for us, and even look at the Iran operation. Yeah, it benefited Israel, but it benefited us. And if we could get it at the price of loaning one B-52 bomber with some fighter planes to guard it for like one day, hey, come on, that's about the best deal I can think of.
Well, we can't minimize that 7 B-2s, which is over half of what their combat ready, made it into that target area and out without even having a shot fired against them. Those guys are amazing. We got to take a break, sir. When we come back, I'll show another little minute from the trailer, but we'll continue this discussion about the Dragon Prophecy with Dinesh D'Souza. New movie coming out.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
Could the fate of the world, of humanity itself, be somehow tied to this place?
The nation of Israel is a resurrected nation. So what if there was going to be a resurrection of another people, an enemy people of Israel? The Bible speaks about this whole war as a dragon representing the enemy attacking a woman representing Israel.
The civilian deaths on both sides represent victories on the part of the dragon.
Hamas did everything within their ability to maximize the civilian casualty.
We came back to a land that was largely barren and empty, and we brought it back to life, and we're going to keep it.
The devil hates the Jewish people because they represent the existence of God.
Because without that Jewish foundation, there is no Christianity.
If we're approaching the end of time, God will reveal himself more and more.
Back to the Rob Maness Show. The Dragon's Prophecy, it's a new movie by Dinesh D'Souza based on the book by Jonathan Cahn. And you saw Jonathan in that clip right there. Dinesh is with us today to talk through this. Dinesh, you mentioned the archaeological research that you did in the last segment. How did that support your findings and determine what you thought important to put into the movie based on the archaeology and how it linked to the Bible? Then my follow-up question is going to be, how do you see this Dragon's Prophecy linking to 21st century world with the spread of Islam that we discussed already?
So the archaeology is something that goes beyond Jonathan Cahn's book. He addresses his book very much to a Bible-believing audience. And I've got a lot of Christians, of course, who support my work, but I also have secular people. And then some of them are going to say, well, this is all very imaginative and very interesting, but how do we know that the Bible is valid in terms of its historicity, real people, real events, and so on? And so I answered that question by showing you, for example, King David, who was thought to be, some people said, for centuries. Well, he's a mythological figure, kind of like King Arthur. We don't think there really was a King David, let alone a Davidic dynasty. But then a stone came out of the ground, and this is, by the way, only about 25 years ago in northern Israel, and it was a rival king from Syria who was celebrating his victory over, quote, the house of David. And obviously there's a house of David there. That means there was a David. There are seals that have come out that bear the name of the prophet Isaiah. There are minor figures in the Bible who are now validated by history and by archaeology. So I don't do a systematic treatment, but I give you enough and I show it to you that people are going to go, wow. In fact, when I discovered it myself, I'm like, I don't know why every synagogue and every church isn't shouting this information from the rooftops. But evidently the word hasn't fully gotten out to the pastors. Now, with regard to your other question about the future, where is this all going? It's funny that they say Israel is the colonizer. The Jews are in their own ancestral homeland. This is like accusing the Indians of colonizing India. I mean, it makes no sense. But there is Islamic conquest and Islamic colonization. A really good example is right in the middle of Jerusalem, the very site where Solomon built his famous temple, the so-called first temple, and then Herod rebuilt it. Jesus was in that temple. What do you have now? You have a Muslim victory arch. You have a Dome of the Rock, and right next to it, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's almost as if the Muslims coming out of the Arabian desert overran that region, basically decided, let's put a kind of Muslim signature on it, and they've done it. So to me, the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque are symbols of Islamic colonialism.
Yeah, I mean, and the reason I asked you about how what you've learned might relate to the modern world and the spread of Islam is because we see that right here in the United States. I don't know if you've seen the news in the independent media anyway about the mayor of Dearborn telling a Christian pastor, "You don't belong here," and the police chief, making statements about how proud he is and using Arabic to describe Allah, how proud he is to make almost half of the police force of Dearborn, Michigan, Muslim now. That's a direct methodology of colonization, similar to what you described at the Temple Mount, isn't it?
This is why I think the Muslim Brotherhood is the most dangerous of all the Islamic organizations, because it operates not by conquest of the old style, but by political infiltration. They've got a whole document, a whole manual that spells out kind of how it should be done. This is taught in the mosques. And they're much more respectable than Al-Qaeda or Hezbollah or ISIS. So they've been doing this work, and they do it over time so that suddenly you notice, like in Houston, Texas, there are like 45 mosques, and in Dallas, about the same. And this is, by the way, happening in red states. Look, coming back to this notion of the primordial conflict between God and the devil, if the devil was going to occupy one site in the whole world, where would he choose? Well, he would choose the Temple Mount, because that's the holiest site of Judaism and Christianity. And so basically the dragon goes, let me go and sit over there. And so the dragon here is, you can say, draped in the colors of Islam. Jonathan Cahn has this fascinating discussion where he talks about the colors of the apocalypse, which represent famine and death and destruction. And then he shows that the exact same colors of the apocalypse are the colors of the Palestinian flag, and in fact the colors of the flags of some of the other Islamic nations as well. So there is a very clear aroma and echo and resonance of the Bible speaking through the events of today, suggesting that we're living in biblically significant times. I don't know if we're in we're in the last days. It's a little difficult to say, but are we in the last age, which predicts that the Jews would come back to their ancestral homeland, which predicts that there would be continuing, where good will be proclaimed as evil and evil will be proclaimed as good, the moral inversion, the attack on the family, the attack on creation, the distinction between men and women. The Bible talks about a kind of return to Sodom and Gomorrah. And you know what? We're seeing some of that now.
Oh, we are. You interviewed the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, who is a devout Bible believing Christian. Uh, uh, what was his take on the prophecy in the modern world and the events surrounding everything?
I think, there's a debate now occurring on the right, and there are some people who use this phrase replacement theology. And what they
Mm,
seem to be saying is that the New Testament and Jesus has replaced the Old Testament. Now, this is actually not, at least this interpretation is not mainstream Christianity, because quite frankly, if the New Testament had replaced the Old Testament wouldn't even be in the Bible. You would just have the
mhm,
New Testament. Second of all, the Old Testament really focuses on God the Father. The New Testament focuses on God the Son and God the Spirit. So that's the three persons of the Trinity. So can you imagine how heretical it is to say, all right, let's leave God the Father out of it, right? We're not going to talk about the Old Testament. We're just going to focus on the Son and the Spirit. Well, then you're down from the three persons in one God to two. The Trinity now becomes a sort of something else. And
mhm.
so my point is, we're not just arguing here about dispensationalism or some kind of reading inside of Pentecostalism. We're just talking about the mainstream understanding of Christianity, what C.S. Lewis calls mere Christianity. I think it's very well expressed in a phrase which says that the New Testament is in the Old, concealed, and the Old Testament is in the New, revealed. The point being that the New Testament and the Old Testament, they go together. They're like a true, the New Testament is a tree growing out of the older branch. They cannot be separated, the one from the other. So that's what Huckabee believes, and I think he's right.
Well, yeah, I mean, the seedling of that tree, in effect, was Jesus Christ, who is Jewish, and the
Yes.
disciples that he appointed and anointed and gave the Great Commission to were Jewish.
And Paul, who preached to the Gentiles, nevertheless, if you follow Paul's journey in the book of
Hmm.
Acts, he's basically preaching in synagogues. He goes to Smyrna, he goes to Asia Minor, he goes to Greece, but everywhere he's preaching in the synagogue. So those early Christians were really Jewish. Many of them met in synagogues, and you can actually call them Judeo-Christians because they saw themselves as Jews. They kept the Sabbath, they followed the Jewish rites and rituals, but they believed that Jesus was their Messiah.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I grew up in a household that didn't emphasize the Old Testament much, but my wife grew up as a Nazarene Christian and has a different view, and she has led me and witnessed to me, even in our household, to we have an attempt to follow more of the Jewish festivals because of how they're linked in the Bible to what we believe in Christianity. And even Charlie Kirk, if I remember correctly, I saw Charlie talk about how he observes the Sabbath day, turns his phone off and everything because it's a biblical based observation that he thought ought to be done. Are you hearing that from more people?
I have heard that. I don't do those things. I mean, I observe
Hmm.
Sunday, and I'm a very traditional Christian in that sense. But I do have a lot of respect for the Jewish root out of which Christianity came, and Jesus himself is constantly referring to the Hebrew scriptures. I mean, let's be honest. Jesus was a rabbi. He bathed in the pool of Siloam. He walked up the pilgrimage road with all the other Jews. Quite frankly, the only Bible that Jesus had was the Old Testament. The New Testament hadn't yet been written. So that's what Jesus considered scripture. And the idea that somehow we need to sort of get beyond it or throw it out or it's all obsolete or God gave the land to Abraham and then he's taken it back, as soon
Hmm.
as Jesus came. I mean, think how absurd this is. If you go out and buy a piece of land, you own it for all eternity. That's how you can bequeath it to your family, your son or daughter. They can bequeath it to their
Hmm.
son or daughter. If you buy a piece of land and they tell you, listen, this is conditional. If you stop behaving yourself, we're going to come and take the land back. Well, then it was never yours.
You're absolutely right, sir. The next segment I saved to talk about your interview with the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu because I think he's a fascinating individual as a human being, but I also want to pick your brain on what you learned from him regarding the dragon's prophecy, but also, how it might be linked to what's happening on the ground and around the world, really, because I don't think this is limited to just the Middle East. We'll be right back with Dinesh D'Souza talking about the movie and the book, The Dragon's Prophecy, in 1 minute.
We have a big announcement, folks. It's called Bella Melt. In the first week, you lost 3 pounds on this, right?
That is correct.
Your GLP-1 is a natural hormone that's in every single one of our bodies. And your GLP-1 lets you know if you're full. It's a satiety hormone. So when your GLP is working properly, it does help suppress your appetite as well as reduce those cravings. So what it's going to do best is it's going to reduce your sugar cravings or any other cravings you have in your body. It's going to suppress that appetite. But where Melissa got the most benefit, I think, over the last week was the L-carnitine. The L-carnitine tells your mitochondria, this is where we've talked about it before, this is where you produce energy in your cells. It actually tells those mitochondria to burn fat for fuel.
MelissaHouseBG.com just now introducing for the first time Bella Melt with GLP-1 Fast Action.
Peek back through the stones. The story that they've been telling is that Israel is a colonial project. The problem with that is the city of David. We are an inconvenient truth.
Are you aware of any significant archaeological finding that contradicts the Bible?
No.
God's word stands firm. The dragon will not prevail. Your message here is become a dragon slayer.
Based on Jonathan Cahn's #1 international bestseller, The Dragon's Prophecy.
Earth to God, come in God.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast, and talking with the director of the movie, The Dragon's Prophecy, that you just saw there, which is opening in theaters on October 6th, according to the trailer. And Dinesh, you interviewed Prime Minister Netanyahu for the film. How did you find him from his perspective on the prophecy idea itself, on Jonathan's book, that idea? How I guess what I'm asking is, what's his view of this?
I did surprise him by just throwing out the question, like, what do you think of Jesus? Like, what's your take? I'm asking a Jewish guy who's head of the Jewish state to comment on, well, quite honestly, the most famous Jew of all time. And I thought it'd be fascinating to hear him out. And it is. He basically says, look, whatever you think of Jesus, he goes, Jesus was one of us. He goes, his real name, Yeshua. His dad's name, Joseph, Hebrew names. Jesus functions in a Hebrew world. He goes to the temple that's right, down the street in Jerusalem. So I think he was emphasizing that Christianity has its roots deeply in Judaism and is in a way inconceivable without it. The other thing is I discussed issues of civilian casualties. I discussed the issue of, are the Jews of today truly descended from the ancient Israelites? Tucker's question. And Netanyahu was quite eloquent and somewhat scornful, basically saying, gee, what is Tucker really talking about? I mean, is Tucker saying that like the Jews left and then like some other fake Jews sneaked in claiming to be Jews? No, it's the same people. They were forced away. But they maintain their tribal identity. If you read The Merchant of Venice, for example, Shakespeare, the Jews are in Venice, but they're not part of Christian society. They live in distinctive neighborhoods. They eat their own food. They intermarry among themselves. When Shylock's daughter runs away with a Christian, he goes berserk. So you begin to see a window here of all the tribes in the world. The Jews, probably more than anyone else, have held on to their tribal identity. And that's why when you go to Jerusalem now, It's recognizably the land of the Bible. There's some parts of it are just like it was 2,000 years ago.
That's amazing. That's one of the places I haven't been able to get to on the ground. It's on my list, my bucket list to go to because of exactly what you just said, Dinesh. What was the biggest takeaway from your interview with the Prime Minister about the war that's happening? Obviously, it's in the context of what we're talking about in the Dragon's prophecy, but and the challenge that Israel faces with that particular enemy, which is so atrocious.
I mean, can you imagine if you have a country of 10 million, 12 million, you're going up against Iran, they have 80 million. And it's not just Iran. You now have to deal with Turkey. You got to deal with all these other countries. Jihad is a global operation, not to mention the Muslims have this incredible oil wealth. Look at a small country like Qatar. You just have oil gushing out of the ground. Everybody's a millionaire. They can drop money like it's nothing at all. And then you've got 2 billion plus Muslims worldwide compared to what, 25, 28 million Jews? So the Jews are grossly outnumbered. They're grossly outfinanced. They are a David facing Goliath, truly. And that's why, again, you can imagine my kind of apoplectic reaction where you've got some people, again, on our side of the aisle, and they act like Israel is Goliath and the Muslims are David. Even though, I mean, that is just an absurd caricature of the situation. And it's an upside down version of the world as we can visibly see it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The whole twist around the replacement theory, and when you look at the Bible, you mentioned Paul and his preaching, and part of his preaching was how centered around rules about food, if I remember correctly. It was the Gentiles that were brought into the tradition, and the rules modified so that we could be one people. And those people were Jewish with the other people. It's my understanding. I mean, that's where we're at, right?
There was a bit of a showdown between Paul and the apostles, but it's important to realize what they were arguing about. Paul was basically saying that there's no need for these new converts, Gentiles, to follow Jewish rites and rituals. But in no way was Paul saying you don't need the Old Testament, or you don't need the Ten Commandments, or we can leave all that stuff behind. Paul was merely talking about dietary regulations. He was essentially saying that, look, we've got people coming into our world that are not coming from a Jewish root anymore. And so to ask them to sort of become Jewish first, like convert to Judaism and then 6 months later convert to Christianity, that doesn't make any sense, right? That's basically what Paul was saying. And Paul's side won that debate, but it has always been understood for 2,000 years. There was one of the popes, I can't remember now if it was John Paul or Benedict, who said something very profound. He said, it is the Holy Land for everybody, but it's the promised land to the Jews. And again, this is not some quirky replacement theology. This is the absolute mainstream of Christianity.
And it's biblically based. And the way you walk us through it in the documentary, you even use archaeology and historical context to show the facts, right?
The film, very adroitly threads together politics and history. It goes from the past to the present. It also gives you a hint of the future. And by the way, I should say, all tickets for this film are off the website. So you need to go to the Dragons, plural, the dragonsprophecyfilm.com. You can't go to the theater and buy your tickets there. You got to buy them on the website. I'd like you to see the movie in the theater if you can. Why? Because I make these in a very spectacular cinematic way. So if you can see it in the theater, you can't duplicate that experience. However, if you want to watch it at home, then October 9th, next Thursday, it will be streaming, it'll be DVDs, and so you'll be able to do that as well. But again, you can pre-order all that, the streaming, the DVDs, at thedragonsprophecyfilm.com.
Will the theaters that it's available in, are they listed on the website too, Dinesh, when you go to buy
Yeah, the
tickets?
beauty of it is you go on the website and you just put in your zip code, and boom, all the theaters around you playing the film will come up. And then you can just choose where you want to go, buy your ticket right there, round up your family and friends. You can get tickets for everybody, and then off you go. So it's very simple, but the website will show you how to get the tickets. And also, if you want DVDs, they'll be in your mailbox on October 9th, but you can pre-order them now.
Outstanding, outstanding. Well, a couple of more questions for you before I let you go. You know, this movie is about a profound subject that's very well documented in many cases through ways like you did with archaeology and historical context and documents and those kind of things. What impact did it have on you as a person that understands this, but maybe not have dove as deep into it as anybody else has before here in the 21st century? Did it have some kind of impact on you personally as you built the story in the movie?
Yes, we've been talking about, well, especially now, I think after Charlie Kirk's assassination, a deeper understanding that we can't fix our world just with politics. We need politics, but we also need more. We need morality, we need institutions, we need spirituality, we need God. And this film takes that idea seriously. So when people talk about renewal, this is a powerful film, and it does take you, sort of down into the abyss, but it also draws you out. So it ends on a very uplifting and inspiring note. To put it very simply, Jonathan Kahn says the way to deal with the dragon is to become a dragon slayer, become a defeater of evil, which we can do, and the film tells you how to do that. So yes, it's had a profound impact on me in the sense that it has shown me the need to integrate the political plane of things with, you can say, the moral plane as well as the spiritual plane. That's something I haven't really attempted to do in any of my earlier films. So this film, in that sense, I think is reaching for the stars.
Yeah, I look forward to it. I'm excited about it. I've seen all of your films in the movie theater that were released to theaters, and folks, I can't recommend that enough. And I like that Jonathan said that we all need to become dragon slayers. And I noticed that the president posted the St. Michael's prayer, and St. Michael's the ultimate dragon slayer, Michael the archangel, and that's where we've got to go. But it's a positive experience. It's like, I don't know about you, Dinesh. This will be the last thing before I let you go. But Charlie Kirk, although I'm devastated by the person that I was able to be friends with in the most tangential way, but I supported for 13 or 14 years of his work as we supported each other. But I'm also have hope at the revival that you're seeing. And I hate to use the word revival because people might take it the wrong way, but it's a positive outlook of young people and old people alike in a massive way that I've never witnessed in my lifetime. How about you?
I think it's absolutely true. Debbie, my wife, and I were sitting right in front up there at the funeral, and to see one after the other, these top officials of the country, invoking not just in a very generic way God, but specifically, Jesus and the Savior and the Messiah. I've never seen anything really like this. I come from the Reagan era when I was a young man. Reagan would talk about God, and once, twice, he'd whimsically talk about, well, the man upstairs, but not the kind of explicit religiosity that we saw at that memorial. So I think that was a really great kickoff for what I hope will be a lasting national and perhaps even global revival.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you so much for giving us all of this time today. We definitely appreciate it. And I'll be promoting the movie and pushing people to go get it. Just remind folks where they can follow you on social media real quick, and I'll let you go.
Follow me on X at Dinesh D'Souza. The movie website, again, The Dragons, plural, thedragonsprophecyfilm.com.
Thank you, sir. God bless you. God bless the United States. And go get it, thedragonsprophecy.com. Tomorrow, we're talking to Tracy Slepcevic about the Trump administration's move to solve the autism problem. We're going to talk about the Tylenol press conference and all of the issues associated with that with her. I look forward to it here on Whistleblower Wednesday. I'll see you then on Worldview Tube.
True beauty isn't applied. It's nourished from within. Bella Grace Elixir, a luxurious, scientifically crafted blend designed to restore radiance, vitality, and strength at a cellular level. At the heart of Bella Grace Elixir lies cat's claw, a powerful herb from the Amazon known for its ability to control inflammation and protect collagen. With Verisol collagen peptides, it goes beyond the surface, stimulating your body's natural collagen production to reduce fine lines, improve skin elasticity, and promote real, visible change. Bella Grace Elixir doesn't stop at collagen. It includes astaxanthin, one of nature's most powerful antioxidants. 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C, astaxanthin protects your skin from harmful UV rays and environmental stress, while locking in hydration and promoting a radiant, youthful glow. Experience the power of nature with Bella Grace Elixir at melissahousebg.com. Discover the science behind Bella Grace Elixir at melissahousebg.com. Read powerful testimonials from doctors and real customers who've experienced life-changing results, and explore other wellness products from Bella Grace. Bella Grace Elixir is more than just a product. It's a solution. Visit melissahousebg.com today.
Welcome to Worldview Tube's Washington Report. I'm your host, Logan House. I'm joined by my co-host, Jim Paff of theconservativecaucus.org. Jim, how are you doing?
Doing well. How are you doing today, my friend?
Good, good. We got a lot of pretty big news day today. We had Trump and Netanyahu at the press conference announcing a peace plan. And they basically have all the countries signed off except for they're waiting on the approval of Hamas and see if Hamas will accept the deal or not. So we'll see. Yeah. But go ahead.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Listen, Hamas. Let's just keep in mind. Your dad and I mean, we've had this discussion. Like, he's maybe more critical than I am, but I'm not saying Israel's perfect. But please, Hamas are a rancid death cult. They don't want this. They don't want anything good coming out of this, and that's why they're holding off, and we'll see what happens.
Yep, we'll see. But here's Trump announcing the countries that are in agreement with the plan so far.
And I want to just say that my meetings and dialogue that we had with so many countries, Saudi Arabia as an example, the king is a phenomenal person. The Emir of Qatar, he's incredible people. UAE, and that's MBZ and ABZ. We're totally involved. These are the people that we've been dealing with and who've been actually very much involved in this negotiation, giving us ideas, things they can live with, things they can't live with. Pretty complex. I mean, after 2,000, 3,000 years, whatever it is, I guess it's got to be a little complex, or it would have been done a long time ago. The King of Jordan was with us, as you know, in the United Nations. The President of Turkey, President Erdogan, is a friend of mine, a strong man, but a good man. President of Indonesia, somebody who's an amazing leader, Prabowo. He is an amazing leader and respected by everybody. He was in the room with us. We were together with most of these people that I'm mentioning. Others were by phone or the next day. The Prime Minister and the Field Marshal of Pakistan, they were with us right from the beginning. Incredible. In fact, they just put out a statement that they fully believe in this pact. It just came out just as I was walking around. They said, "Sir, you have a big notice from the Prime Minister of Pakistan and from the Field Marshal that they back this 100%. President El-Sisi of Egypt, who's terrific. And these are people I've gotten to know over the years. I mean, I would say it started around 2015 and then went into 2016 when the presidency officially began. But I've known them actually for a long time, and they're in many cases really great men. I can't say in all cases, but I will tell you in many cases they're great men, and some great women too. They tend to be mostly men, however, I will say that.
Well, there you go.
Sorry, I hadn't heard that part.
And I want
that's hilarious.
Yeah, yep. And he also announced a international peace. I think what was it called? You know what it was? The international body that he was creating.
Yeah, I can't remember the name he used. Sorry, I'm forgetting
but he said he was heading it, and it was a body, international body, to work for peace. So I guess we'll see what happens, but they're just waiting on Hamas. So.
Well, if it's an international body for peace, then that really relieves me, because that means he's not going to be heading up the UN, because that is definitely not an international body for peace.
Yeah.
Just quick editorial comment there.
Yep. Well, in other news, we'll see what happens with that. But in other news, it seems like Congress is fighting on who is going to be to blame if the government shuts down. Democrats are all screaming that it's up to the Republicans, but here's J.D. Vance on this.
We just had a very frank conversation with the Senate and House Democratic leadership. Look, the principle at stake here is very simple. We have disagreements about tax policy, but you don't shut that government down. We have disagreements about health care policy, but you don't shut the government down. You don't use your policy disagreements as leverage to not pay our troops, to not have essential services of government actually function. You don't say the fact that you disagree about a particular tax provision is an excuse for shutting down the people's government and all the essential services that come along with it. If you look at what Chuck Schumer has said in the past consistently, it's whatever our disagreements are, let's negotiate with them, let's talk about them, let's figure out a bipartisan solution, but you don't shut the government down. In other words, you don't put a gun to the American people's head and say, unless you do exactly what Senate and House Democrats want you to do, we're going to shut down your government. That's exactly what they're proposing out there. Now, we have to remember, they're very frustrated. They say that they're very frustrated about the fact that this negotiation has not taken place until today. But if you look at the original thing they did with this negotiation, it was a $1.5 trillion spending package, basically saying to the American people, we want to give massive amounts of money, hundreds of billions of dollars to illegal aliens for their health care, while Americans are struggling to pay their health care bills. That was their initial foray into this negotiation. We thought it was absurd. We told them it was absurd, and now they come in here saying that if you don't give us everything that we want, we're going to shut down the government. We think that's preposterous. We think it's totally unacceptable, and we think the American people are going to suffer because these guys won't do the right thing. Now, I want to make one final point here. You will hear a lot from Senate Democrats, from House Democrats about the fact that American health care policy is broken. Well, we know that American health care policy is broken. We've been trying to fix it for the 8 months that we've been in office, but every single thing that they accuse about being broken about American health care is policy the Democrats have supported for the past decade. So if they want to talk about how to fix American health care policy, let's do it. The Speaker would love to do it. The Senate Majority Leader would love to do it. Let's work on it together, but let's do it in the context of an open government that's providing essential services to the American people. That's all that we're proposing to do, and the fact that they refuse to do that shows how unreasonable their position is. I think we're headed to a shutdown because the Democrats won't do the right thing. I hope they change their mind, but we're going to see.
Well, there you go. And you have Schumer coming out after that meeting and saying that it's up to the Republicans. It's going to be the Republicans' fault if the government shuts down.
Well, what's unique about this, and remember, I first went to work on Capitol Hill after the 2010 elections. So I was involved in the last, two long shutdowns ago. There was one 35 days during the Trump administration, one 16 days in 2013, and I was working on Capitol Hill at the time. I've seen these things come and go for nearly 2 decades now. And this is the actual first time that Republicans are saying exactly the right thing. Everything J.D. Vance said there is right on target and the types of things that Republicans should have been doing. This is Chuck Schumer needing a shutdown because he was, according to his radical leftist base in the Democrat Party, they were pissed off at him for allowing a deal to be done the last potential government shutdown in the spring. And he took a lot of political heat for that, and he's going to go all the way to try to please those people because, frankly, AOC's on his heels for a Democrat primary in New York, and it looks like she has a chance to beat him in a Senate primary, Democrat primary. So he could lose a seat. So he's going to do what he's doing. Of course, he's always kind of been this way. Democrats have, for the last 30 years at least, maybe even longer than that, have gone back and forth and demanded, and in situations like this, that Republicans do what they say because they believe they run things. That Schumer's doing that again right now. He got beat up a little bit when he compromised the last shutdown, and he's going to put in his heels. He doesn't want to lose a seat. I don't know if he'll be successful at that, but nonetheless, he's going to take this on. On the other side of this issue, I'm perfectly fine always with government shutdowns. You know what happens during the government shutdown? You have tax revenue still coming in. Essential services still take place and they're paid for with the incoming tax revenue. And non-essential services get paid when the funding comes back later. The shutdown in 2013, I didn't get a paycheck for 2 weeks. I got it all back on the back end of it, just like every other federal employee got it all back, because that was the deal they play. What may be happening this time is Russ Vought, the OMB director, has put out a letter to every federal agency saying they have to have a reduction in force plan. In other words, letting people go if there's a shutdown. And I'm fine with that. You could see hundreds of thousands of federal employees taken off the payrolls permanently, and I would like to see that. They want to get rid of all NGO funding because it's not going to be appropriated. Do it. We shouldn't even be funding the NGOs to begin with. Democrats are playing a game here I think they're going to lose, and the Trump administration is taking all the right steps to oppose this, and Schumer's going to lose this. And also give credit to Donald Trump because he's driving, and J.D. Vance, but Donald Trump primarily, because he's driving this process. And Republicans are following his lead rather than, as Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell did, undermine him whenever these things would come up back in his first administration. So it's a brand new day. I hope it plays out the way I think it's going to.
Fetterman Well, I saw here Senator Fetterman had some advice for Chuck Schumer. It says, John Fetterman says he has one suggestion for Chuck Schumer and Democrats plotting to shut down the government.